Hi, I'm Jill. I'm married to Dan. I have two adult kids, Joseph, who's 25, and Aaron, who's 21.
Not long ago, I was attempting to spread some compost under a peach tree, and I knelt on a mesquite thorn. It hurt and bled a little, but I quickly went back to work. That night, there was a tiny bump that looked like an insect bite. The next day, it was sore to the touch and a little bit warm. The day after that, it was red and swollen. I could barely bend my knee. I made plans to call the doctor in the morning, and yeah, I was a little scared. But when I woke up, my knee seemed better. Maybe the thorn had worked its way out in my sleep. I was praying. I knew that a lodged mesquite thorn could cause quite a bit of trouble. Grateful, I moved on, but I was still scratching my head, wondering what had happened. The next week, I was trimming some blackberries and got scratched up and down my arms from thorns. A few of them got stuck in my fingers. They swelled a little, and I poked them out with a needle like a splinter. What was God trying to teach me? I was getting tired of thorns. There are a lot of examples of thorns in the Bible. We first hear about thorns after man sinned. Thorns seem to symbolize sorrow and hardship. The Apostle Paul had a thorn in the flesh. He prayed 3 times for God to take it away. Rather than grant that request, God promised him the strength to live with it. You see, God had a purpose for Paul that went beyond saying yes to his prayer request. So how do I respond when my ways are not God's ways? What do I do when God's solution is not my solution? Number 1, identify the problem and take my thoughts captive so that I stop worrying about it and can hand it over to God. Philippians 4:6 says, "Be careful for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God." Number 2, pray to God for his solution. Jesus prayed and asked God that the cup of suffering he was facing be taken from him. Jesus also prayed for the Father's will to be done and not his. Luke 22:42. Number 3, embrace and repeat out loud Proverbs 15:9, which says, "A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps." You see, I can plan all I want, but God always acts according to his purpose, and his ways are not always ours. Isaiah 55:8. The Apostle Paul got an answer from God, but he didn't get the thorn removed. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Not all Paul's prayers were answered the way he first wanted. We see that Paul accepted God's answer because God promised to be with him and to give Paul strength. The purpose was that God would be glorified. God makes the same promise to us. Next time something troubles you, no matter how desperately you want to see things go according to your plan, consider the faith of Jesus and of Paul. Jesus endured the cross. Paul accepted God's grace. And know God is working according to good in your circumstances. Romans 8:28. I don't really understand why I got that thorn in my knee, and I don't really know how it got better. But I do know that there are times when I want my solution to a problem, and I struggle to believe that God is enough. And if I go on my feelings alone, I even struggle to believe that God is there. I think that's the truth that God was reminding me of when my knee hurt so bad. He is there. He's able and he cares. He's working towards a higher good than I can understand. That's part of the journey, to trust God's character and His Word, even in the times when we can't see how things will work out. No matter what happens, whether God removes the thorn or not, His grace is always sufficient. We can count on that.
You know, Jill, when I think about that, the thing that really strikes me is the fact that we don't have a clue what a servant is. Mm-hmm. We've never been slaves. Mm-hmm. We've never been servants. Mm-hmm. Not the kind of bond servant that talks about in the Bible.
Yeah.
We don't know. We think we're automatically God's kids and Christ equal, and that He is there for us to do whatever we want Him to do to get us out of pain, to get us out of misery, to get us out of this, to get us out of that. That's all He's there for. And I think because of that, we wrestle a great deal. As you were saying in your blog, we wrestle whenever that doesn't automatically happen, or that we don't automatically understand it. Because in our thoughts, like your blog basically is, I think, very, very common, practical, and with everybody. Why, God? Why? Why didn't you do this? I asked you and you should have done it. I requested it should be done. Even Paul, in his case, you know, I don't demur him, but how many times did he ask him?
3.
3 times. And it's like, come on, Lord, I've asked you this before and before and before, and you've not answered me, so what's going on? And Paul understood servants very much. He just didn't understand purpose. Because, well, for one thing, we're already perfect. Okay, so we don't need any completing. It's once you're in with God, once you're a disciple, you're finished. There's nothing else. Hey, sit back, baby, and enjoy the fruits and benefits of Jesus, your servant's going to offer you. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest part, and maybe where we have to come to go, well, wait a minute. Maybe Christ is not my servant. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm His servant. And as a servant, what would I expect? Mm-hmm. You know, the thought comes to my mind. Well, the kid says, "Don't beat me, Massa. Don't beat me." I'm like, I know he's not going to beat me. Mm-hmm. But what do we expect of God? Are we here? And He goes, "Oh, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so thankful you accepted my life, the death of my son, eternal life. I am so glad you did that. Thank you, thank you. Now, what else do you want?" Uh-huh. Just a thought. What do you think?
I think that's accurate. I think that we just kind of think we pray, we ask God, and He should do stuff for us. And I think for me, it's figuring out, hey, it's not my family, it's not my rules. If I'm grafted into the tree, you know, it talks about us being adopted as sons. If I'm grafted into the tree, it's not because I was great, it was through faith. And if I'm now a part of this tree, how does this tree work? Because I don't get to dictate how it works. So looking around in the Bible, seeing what people experienced, seeing what they learned, that's what I need to be doing, because I have to figure out this new way of thinking. It's not like I bring God into my old way of thinking, thank goodness, because it was distorted and purposeless. But figuring out a new way to live your life is part of it. And we kind of learn that by the School of Hard Knocks, I think.
Well, I think sometimes the guy said, yeah, well, your family tree is cactus because everybody in there gets kind of sticky. Mm-hmm. If we sit back and said, you know, God, I owe you everything. Mm-hmm. I am not in a position to barter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if God came and you said to him, as in the Bible, it happened often, but you came to him and said, God, would you save my child?
Mm-hmm.
And God said, or my child died. Would you resurrect him from the dead? And God said, yeah. And we go, gee, thanks, God. Appreciate it. See you later.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you a graduation card.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we really understand that it was a covenant,
Mm-hmm.
which is a mutual agreement.
Mm-hmm.
If I give you life, you give me life.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I gave you all, you give me all.
Yep.
And if we ever come to that and understand it, then we go from an ingrate
Mm-hmm.
to a gracious person
Yeah.
who maybe can say, oh, it's just a thorn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people are losing their heads and their families and their children, and it's just a thorn.
Yep.
It'll pass away. Not that we don't ask for purpose. I don't mean that we just pass over and don't say that, because all things work together for the good.
Yes.
But if we know it's good, and we know that verse, and we believe that verse,
Mm-hmm.
then that removes the why. I think we're
Yeah.
a bunch of whiny people.
Yeah.
Why, oh Lord, why? Why are you picking on me? Why do I have why don't they have this?
Mm-hmm.
I think, and because why doesn't always ask purpose. You know, why is just, why me?
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose, God, oh, it works together for my good. This is for my good.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, who would thought God would allow you to have a thorn so you could have a blog? You know? And otherwise, would you have ever stopped to think about it, to put God in perspective to the thorn?
No, I wouldn't have.
No, I think you're absolutely right. We would just go on our merry way, like this is all about us,
Mm-hmm.
and not about But to think, he takes the time
Mm-hmm.
to do that. You know, sometimes when you tell your kids to tie their shoes and tie their shoes and tie their shoes and they don't,
Mm-hmm.
then you think, you know what? I know they're going to step on their shoelace at some point and fall right on their face. And when they get through and get up and go, why did I fall? You go, well, let's see. To learn
Yeah.
that this happens when you don't tie your shoes. Now, does everything that happened to us, can we point about it and go, oh, this is because I was not? No. Learning is not a negative thing. You were a teacher, Jill. You were a teacher of the year in Fort Worth, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Is learning always punitive?
Learning's not supposed to be punitive at all.
Exactly.
You're supposed to make things better and help you for the next year. Yeah.
Exactly right. So if we view that God is teaching us and go, wow, this is going to make it easier next year.
Yeah.
Whatever comes next,
Yeah.
this is going to make it easier. So it's not like, you know, it's not like I fall into a bed of cactus. I just got one thorn. So good. I think that is great. I think to help people realize that God is a good God and everything he does is for our learning. But instead of, I don't think there's reason to question it if we know already the answer is all things work together for the good. Now, the next thing, of course, as human beings, we're going, what good? And why is that good?
Well, I'm like, if I can't see the good, then I can't believe it's good, and then that's where my faith isn't there.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good to me. And you notice I had thorn issues twice. It wasn't like I caught it the first time. So 1 week my knee, the next week my hands, and I'm like, okay, maybe I do need to stop and think about it. I wasn't too quick on the uptake. I needed a little remedial in that lesson.
Well, you know, sometimes I think that God is such a God of nature that he uses so many things in nature to try to tell us things. If we just stop and look at them and go, you know, I hate to say this, but there's one part in there that you said that caught my attention. He had a crown of thorns.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Not just one.
Not just one, and not in his finger or knee, in his head.
Exactly. Pressed into his head.
And with derision and scorn.
Yeah.
Like, there was no one making fun of me, you know. It's just, I was by my lonesome.
Yeah.
This was 100 billion times worse.
Yeah. So when I look at that, I go, whoop, wow. Wow. Excuse me, Lord, for being a wimp. I need to look the other way. No, and I don't have to do that. I just have to say, God, thank you. Thank you. If this one was bad, I can only imagine what a whole crowd of war. Thank you, Jill. I think every time we think of these things, even though we think, well, it's incidental, what does that have to do? It has to do everything with life. It's because that's where we are. If you figure the little things out, big things don't matter.
That's true. That's really true.
Or they matter less.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Take care.
Hey y'all, thanks for joining us for Around the Supper Table. At Sanctuary Family Farms, we want to be real. Whether that's through our blogs, daily verses, or even Nana's recipes, we want to share the messages that God has laid on each of our hearts. If you liked what you heard today or want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Sanctuary Family Farms or our website at www.sanctuaryfamilyfarms.com, where we share our recipes and blogs and sell farm fresh beef and pork. We can't wait for you to join us again for next week's episode.